All right. There we go. Welcome everyone to Succeeding as a College Athlete in the New Era of NIL. This webinar is meant to just help inform you. We got a lot of heavy hitters today coming in with us. I can't wait to introduce them. We will be here for about an hour and it is being recorded. So if anybody wants to get their hands on this afterwards and spread the word, please feel free. I'm so excited to introduce our panel today. Well, I'll start with myself. My name is Christina Lowe, and I have a podcast with my husband right now called The Download. You should tune into it on Spotify if you get a chance. We talk about everything from marriage to kids to finances, and it's a really good time. We've got Chad Willardson here. I like to call him the money man of the show. He's going to help us understand just about what mistakes they make financially, what can they do to avoid financial mistakes in this. And I just want to go over Chad's resume really quick. He is the founder and CEO of Pacific Capital. He's also the author of a book called Stress-Free Money. You were elected the official managing $450 million for taxpayers. That's amazing. You just mentioned that you just got done speaking at MIT, and you are the co-founder and board member at Gravy Stack. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about that a little bit later, because I had a chance to sit on your webinar with Gravy Stack, and it was so awesome what you guys are doing to help just showcase financial literacy for kids and start them young. We don't learn this stuff in schools, and just so grateful that you guys are doing that.
Thank you.
You're also the co-owner of the Draft Sports Complex, and you were featured in the WSJ and Forbes magazines. And also, this is really important, you're the father of 5 and a husband of 21 years.
That's true. That's what they say. It's a party. We're on 10 sports teams right now. So I'm a taxi driver to and from sports practices every night.
I understand. I cannot wait to hear more about that. Next up is Eric Salazar. Eric, you are part of the West Region staff at the College Golf Fellowship, and you live in LA County with your wife, Becky. You played college golf at Princeton. So this is awesome that we have your point of view on this webinar, because you actually were a college athlete. You're former professional golfer, and you even competed on the PGA Tour in Canada. My husband is an avid golfer, and I'm trying to get him on tour because I need him to make some of the money back from all that he spends on golf. So if you could help him, that would be amazing. And you earned your MA in spiritual formation and soul care. And I love, we'll get into this a little bit later, but just this aspect of faith that you're going to bring, and some of the questions we want to ask just surrounding faith and athletes. And you are nearly a decade in ministry experience. Can you talk a little bit about that? How long? Did that happen, like by chance? Did you always want to do ministry?
Well, we could say it's by chance, but I don't really believe in chance, right? No expectation of going into ministry after college. I thought I was going to be a professional golfer, and the organization I now work for was very impactful in my journey as a college student and as a recent grad. And when I was ready to make a change, meeting with a mentor of mine who's now my boss, he said, "We'd like to take on some interns. Why don't you come work for us?" And that was 9 years ago now, and here we are.
Wow, that is awesome. I love what you said. We don't believe in chance. That's so good. Well, so glad to have you here, Eric. And then we've got Alex Zapata, fresh from Miami, Florida. What's up, Alex? He is the founder and CEO of Z Access. And you also are a sports agent. And I was looking up your resume because I was like, I know this isn't it. And I saw that you were an adjunct professor over at Boston Suffolk University. And are you doing marketing, sports marketing for the students over there?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's awesome. Actually, I got my MBA at Suffolk, so love to be back there and, and give a little bit, whatever I could. And we started a entrepreneurship / sports management course there that's really taken off. So super excited. We are actually live in 6 days. So
wow. Okay. Busy season for you then. All right, so good to have you here. And then
Thank you.
we've got Constantine Potamianos. I like to call him the sage. He is the infallible authority on all things at this law firm, and we look to him for so much wisdom and counsel. He's got so much experience. Constantine, how much experience do you have in just legal counsel?
Oh gosh, at least a quarter century now. So that makes
Perfect.
it sound like a long time. But yeah, been around a little bit.
But you're also a veteran and you were in the military. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I spent a total of 25 years in service, a combination of active, reserve, guard, and other agency service. All of it in the Army, regular Army, and then Army Special Operations, which was a tremendous experience for me. It's great to be able to serve our country, and we all do it in different ways, but that's one way. And it's, we've talked about this before, but the similarities between the team ethos on the military side and athletics, both, high level amateur athletics and professional athletics, there's a lot of overlap there that I see constantly. So I'm very pleased to be part of this panel.
We love having you, Constantine. And then we've got Jerome Fogle, the mogul. Jerome is the co-founder of Fogel and Potamianos. And I just want to say one of the best leaders I've ever served under. And I think what you bring to this, Jerome, is just your ability to create leaders and a team. And you've done such a great job at that. And I want to get into that a little bit later. And you mentioned that on our last webinar that we had, the Life After the Game, you talked about how to construct a great team. And as we know, for these college athletes, it's so important for them to make sure they have the right team around them in order for them to succeed and not get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jerome, for putting on these amazing webinars and for allowing me just the privilege to be able to host it today.
Of course. Well, you really put it on. I didn't do much.
I'm your Ricky. Only Chad gets that one. All right, guys, well, let's jump right in. And I would love to just open the floor for this one. I want to know, I am a total layman when it comes to what NIL even means. Can someone just explain what NIL stands for and then what that means in the sports world?
Happy to jump in if that's okay. So NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And for forever, previously to last year, last July, when this law went into effect, student athletes were not able to capitalize on opportunities, marketing opportunities based on their name, image, and likeness. Thanks to a lot of effort for a long period of time, this has become a reality where, student athletes are able to, get endorsed by specific brands. Obviously, they still need to, within the lines of the school, right? Example, if the school is endorsed or it's a Nike school, they can't, the athlete on the court cannot go ahead and sign an endorsement deal with Adidas, right? Because the school is a Nike school. So there's some limitations there, but it's a great opportunity for both, large athletes in a big school and also smaller schools where, possible smaller NIL deals are available to them as well.
And that's awesome. And what a great definition. And I want to know, how is it different now with the opportunities that we have with this new era of NIL for an athlete to even be compensated with these new laws versus maybe even 10 or 20 years ago when this stuff didn't really exist in this way? What is the difference between now and what an athlete had access to even 10 years ago?
Is that for me? Sorry, I don't want to hog up this. I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
take it away, Alex.
No, I mean, it's a big difference, right? I mean, I'm originally from Boston, right? So, New England baby through and through. So, I mean, sorry, I love my New England folks, but college sports is not really that big, in New England as a comparison to the rest of the country, right? So, for that specific part of the country, maybe smaller, changes, but and we all know, very specific large football schools, basketball schools, et cetera, they're able to really capitalize on that. And again, it might be something small, like a local realty firm wants to, do a marketing NIL deal for an athlete, and, they may get an extra $500 a month, right? Or what have you. So it might not necessarily mean that they're going to, retire with the money they're making, but they're able to work some things out where they could, set certain appearances, utilize their social media platform in order to be able to capitalize on that. We live in a very unique era where, again, social media is so big, and you could reach such a large audience that, say, an athlete from, you name the school, right? A big school, say, hey, I am endorsed by this brand, go out and buy this, could really make an impact, right? For both the athlete and for the brand itself.
And
Right.
this is comparatively new in the sense that for the longest time, and correct me if I'm wrong, amateur athletes were prohibited from capitalizing on this. So this opens up a whole new avenue for folks. Let me throw out a question to Alex and the other guys, to the extent that you've been dealing with this. As we're in this transitional time where this idea that you can potentially market and capitalize this is happening, what's the reaction that you guys are seeing in the trenches, both from the students themselves, as well as, the coaches, schools, all the other people that are kind of have traditionally been involved in the student athlete arena? Are you getting pushback from certain people? Is it getting accepted? Just give us a background in terms of what you guys are seeing.
I can share something.
Yeah.
I think it's widely accepted. From what I'm seeing, athletes are excited. Families of athletes are excited. Boosters and business owners are looking for ways to find opportunities to utilize the great brand of an athlete and also benefit them and benefit the company. I'll give you an example. I'm a co-founder and a board of directors for a company called Gravy Stack. And Christina mentioned it earlier, but we're a financial gaming app with debit cards for kids ages 8 to 18. And our goal is really to promote financial literacy for young people and to make it fun, basically like a fun bank, but it's a game where kids learn and earn real money. And so one of our high school athletes is a senior in high school, and he's an incredible athlete with millions of followers on social media. And I've mentioned it to him before, but we're going to definitely be approaching him with an opportunity for him to earn a lot of money and potentially equity in a business as an 18-year-old, as a senior in high school, of a business that we've already raised close to $10 million to start, a business that we see potentially growing to $1 billion business. So these types of opportunities are not just, there are going to be like the small company, local community, let's give a couple $1,000s to our athletes here and see if we can help them out. But I think there are a lot of great opportunities for co-branding and for mutual benefit that I think if we can be creative, there's a lot of things that can happen. And I've already seen it. I think a USC wide receiver just signed a $1.4 million deal. And I saw that online. I mean, he's got 36,000 social media followers. And there are a lot of athletes out there with a lot more than that. So I think we're just beginning and we're just scratching the surface, really.
And I
It just
think
sounds like the opportunities are endless.
Absolutely.
Right. And Chad, you've talked about the big ones. Obviously some of these can be major deals, but I would think, going to Alex's point from earlier, it also opens the opportunities for local and community sponsorships, small sponsorships that can benefit, small business, local organizations, et cetera, that, traditionally were not part of this.
What's interesting is an example of that is the BYU football program in Utah. One of our clients is invested in Built Bar. If you've heard of those protein bars, right? So they did a program that I think only amounted to maybe $4,000 to $6,000 per athlete, but basically it was all the walk-ons and non-scholarship athletes got their college tuition paid. And it was a really cool gesture of a business that's based in Utah. And they just said, hey, how can we reward all these athletes who don't have scholarships? And so they just basically worked out a deal to be the official team sponsor for all those athletes that are not on scholarship. So like you said, Constantine, I think there are lots of opportunities for smaller business, local business to do something that's impactful that maybe isn't as financially significant.
And
It sounds like, oh, go ahead, Alex.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it just sounds like there's more opportunity even for the athletes that wouldn't normally be recognized, that would be able to get a bigger deal because they already have the giant following. It just feels really great that other people are getting a shot to be even compensated for their talent or recognized in a bigger way.
Absolutely.
And I'll dare to say that, even for the school, I know obviously there's always been a gray area there, but for the school, it kind of works out in a sense, right? Because the number one reason most of these guys, say they're one and done, right? They're eligible for the draft is because they want to get paid, right? For the most part, most of these guys, they want to get paid. They want to take care of their family. So with this, it kind of opens up the opportunity where, say the athlete, maybe they're not 100% committed into going to the draft or testing the waters, right? They could say, you know what, maybe I'll stick around another year because I got XYZ in endorsement deals and I could take care of my family for now, get better prepared, and then I'll go to the draft. So it works in the benefit of the school too in certain circumstances.
So I want to ask the next question. We already started talking about deals a little bit. So what does that look like? Someone's in high school. Do they get approached in high school for a deal? And if they don't get approached in high school, how do they go about going after some of this stuff if they're going to college and playing a sport?
Maybe Alex or Eric can answer that one.
I think Alex can.
I don't want to hook up the entire, but no, it's happy to chime in. In certain cases, yes, they do get approached. There's still some limitations in some states about some high school, what they can and cannot do. So again, we're still, as Chad mentioned earlier, we're not even scratching the surface on the opportunities. Most of the time is guys going already selected a college, right? Because that's sort of the bigger market, if you will, right? There's a handful of high school athletes that, really are, celebrity status, if you will. For the most part of those folks going into college, making an impact or transferring from one school to the other, which obviously, since the era of the transfer portal, we have seen a lot of changes, which also turns into marketing opportunities for these guys.
Mm-hmm. Eric, you played some college golf. And when was that? Like when were you in college doing that? And what were your opportunities that you might've had as a college athlete?
So I graduated in 2011, and I was just thinking of this situation that came up in my career. My senior year, I was asked to do an instructional video just for our website, just as a fun thing for the university. There were no strings attached to it. There was no expectation of any kind of compensation, anything like that. And one of the other schools contacted us, or contacted the USGA, so the United States Golf Association, concerned that I was violating the rules of amateurism just by being on our website and posting an instructional video. So obviously, completely different era, completely different opportunities for students now. And I wasn't even trying to make money off of something like that. One of the interesting things in the golf world is that many students are international, and there's still a lot of there's a lot of issues with student visas and what they're allowed to do in terms of being compensated, in terms of taking on jobs and work. And so there's a lot of kinks to get ironed out, especially on the golf side of things, as it relates to NIL. Because you also, in addition to the NCAA, you also have the USGA. and they have their own rules for amateurism. And if you're in conflict with one, you're in conflict with the other. So it's tricky. It's tricky to navigate currently.
And that kind of brings me to my next question, because if this feels very overwhelming, if you don't have a great team, or if you don't know all of the rules and the laws and the different things that you need to look out for. And so, Jerome, you even mentioned that you've just seen some deals where they're asking way too much, and they're too exclusive. So can you just speak to some of that? And also, how does someone even negotiate what's fair? Or do they get a lawyer first? Like what would be the steps?
Right. Yeah. So I think the key here is you want to negotiate, and you want to look at exclusivity. You want to look at how much time you're having to invest, and you want to look at what the return is. So I've seen deals where, maybe it's a NFT deal or some kind of promotion deal, but if you look at the language, the contracting party wants exclusivity. And what that does is that locks you up and locks you out of other opportunities. So early, I'm advising these athletes really to, unless it's a huge brand, that's coming to you with a great offer, you want this to be, number one, non-exclusive. So it keeps doors open. Number two, it's how much time. I've seen deals asking for hours and hours of social media presence time and speaking. And it's just, I think some of these brands think they can just take advantage of these athletes because it's their first time. So I think that's another piece, is how much, looking really clearly in the schedule, like, what am I actually agreeing to? So that's really clear. Either the agent's reviewing that, the attorney, if they can afford one, is reviewing that. The other third thing is really compensation. And so I think for some athletes, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, that may be a lot of money to them. But in the world of sports, it's really looking about what value are you bringing to the table. And also the other thing you need to look at is, for example, a company may say, hey, we're doing a commercial that's going to just be online. But if you look at the fine print, they could potentially take the commercial to a broadcast network and you'd give away your rights. So you have to be really clear with what you're negotiating and what the intent is. And absolutely, you want to have an agent versed in this, have an attorney involved, especially as the numbers get bigger. I have seen some athletes who, they're working with their parents who've got some business experience, and that helps to a certain extent. Certainly having an agent like Alex in your corner is going to be really key. But I do think that brands in general have always wanted to find the next big thing, and now they can start fishing in the high school and college arena earlier than they could have before. So I really think that some big brands are looking to put some big numbers behind things, especially if the athletes can keep their social media presence clean and keep out of headline risk. Like, these are just really important things. Show up on time, do what you say you're going to do. And then as far as the maze of laws, it's really just working with an attorney or working, somebody in the golf world. Like, what Eric just shared is very relevant, right? So, it's having a community of people around you, in your sport, your financial advisors, agent attorneys, and building that team now, because you're going to need one for the future.
There's a natural human tendency that also applies, to situations like this, where the student athlete will focus on the big numbers. They'll focus on, how much time do I need to put in? Like Jerome said, how much money am I going to get out of this? And they lose the details in the fog. And that's where the danger lies, to Jerome's point. Yeah, you want non-exclusivity if you can. But if you have to give an exclusive, you can tailor that, as narrowly as possible. If that's, and you can do that. Same goes with what Jerome is saying in terms of, how expansive are the rights that you're giving up, et cetera. All this stuff really does need to be looked at carefully by whoever is, certainly by the athlete, but also by the team that the athlete surrounds themselves with. And this is a concept that's really important to get out to people. And it's an easy concept once your perspective is right, right? Because you can talk to a kid on a football team and say, can you win this game on your own? Or do you need that quarterback? Do you need that defensive tackle? Do you need that person to actually get you a win, you know, to get you to the championship? And they'll say, well, yeah, of course I do. And it's like, it's the same in life. You need that team around you with their various specialties that you know have your back.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
that's, you know, we see that not only in athletics, we see that in the business world, we see it everywhere, but it's particularly important here, you know, where you have young student athletes kind of putting their toes in the water, seeing opportunities. Some of them may be bigger than they expected. They don't know how to judge them. So it's absolutely critical, I think, to build a team, you know, starting with a good agent like Alex, you know, finding attorneys that can help you navigate this stuff and say, hey, you know, they're asking for A, B, C, and D, but we're seeing most people just give them A and C, you know, and they'll
Right.
probably
So I'm wondering too, because I'm just thinking about like the mom or the dad that's tuning in right now, their kids in high school, they're on track to really do something big. And they're thinking about this, creating a team. And maybe Jerome or Constantine or Alex, maybe one of you guys, or even Eric, like maybe you can just really quickly give some bullet points, like how do you even begin to start that team? Who, you already said it needs to be agent, a lawyer, if you could do so. Like, what does that look like at that level? And how do you know you can trust somebody?
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, I will go with the same plan that I've used all my life, which is I will first go to referrals from people that I trust, people that I know have worked with somebody, et cetera. If Alex, you know, I go to Alex and say, hey, I need a good attorney in this area. And I know Alex is a good guy and we've worked together and he's honorable and he knows his stuff. And he says, you know what? Why don't you give Jerome a call? That is the first person I will call, right? Because it's coming from a trusted source. You know, secondarily from there, you look to see who's active in the community, who's doing things, who's putting on webinars, for example, who actually knows what they're talking about. And third, it's all about personal relationships. And if you start talking to somebody and you're not really comfortable with them, then, you know, you need to keep looking. Though that's kind of the 3-tier approach that I take. I don't know if the rest of the folks here want to add their own perspective on that.
I love that. I actually want to ask Eric, because one of the things, one of the arenas that you serve is ministry. And I want to talk a little bit about the faith aspect and just this holistic idea that our team also includes our community of faith, or just even people that can encourage us in a way. Because man, it's hard out here with social media and all of the pressure to perform or to be liked, and to deal with just all of the things that you have to deal with, people trolling your Instagram, all that stuff. Can you just speak to what that means for an athlete to have the faith element, and just a more holistic approach to their life as a college athlete?
Sure. Yeah, really the biggest benefit of the community of faith is the depth of relationships that you're able to have. The problem with social media, among other things, is you get such a small glimpse into someone's life, someone's small glimpse into the people responding to you. You really need people around you to help ground you in reality. And that's what we hope that our relationship with God will do, that our relationship with other people's in a community of faith will do, will help you to ground yourself, not just in how you look or how you perform, but rather in a sense that you can be you as a person. Mm-hmm. You can fail on the field and you can get back up and try again. You're not defined by your most recent performance. You're defined by something much greater than that. And that's really what we try to help students with. In the best way to do that is in the context of deep relationships.
You said something in there about you're not defined like by your mistakes. What are some of the challenges that athletes are facing off the field that could potentially be something that, you know, could be detrimental to their success or not?
Sure. Well, in the golf world, it's a very objective sport, and the era of NIL kind of throws a little obscurity into that because you can be rewarded not necessarily for your score, but for your appearance or whatnot. And so golfers, every college golfer, they know as soon as they sign their scorecard and turn it in, their score is getting posted onto the website, and there's no pictures attached to it. Whether they shot 85 or 65, no one knows how that is. And the life of a college golfer in particular is every day, every shot, it's a roller coaster. It just is. And so helping students to find balance with that is really important, and helping them to define themselves on something beyond just their score is paramount.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I just feel like it's so important to include that. Because it, you know, even for my generation, I graduated college in 2003. Hello. But like, there's a lot of people that are just really lost right now. They just don't, even if they, from the outside, look like they have a complete purpose and they know what they're doing, they might not be feeling that way. And so I'm glad we talked about that and we address that aspect of faith, because it's so important. I want to switch back over to Chad and just talk about. Go ahead, Constantine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but you guys brought up a thought, and I'd love to throw this out to the group. You know, talking about balance, talking about decisions, etc. Given that we live in a social media age, and you know these young student athletes are actively involved in that. Alex, Chad, Eric, anyone in this group here, what do you see as like the let's say the three biggest mistakes or pitfalls that student athletes run into with respect to their social media presence and how this affects their NIL prospects?
Yeah, I would love to tackle a little bit of that. It's so important because, you know, now you are, even though social media, you are a celebrity, right? So there's, you know, a lot of eyes on you. So everything you do at our moments, if you post it, you know, and these younger athletes, they love to post every single thing. That could be a very good thing, but it could also be a very bad thing, right? Because if you're doing things that are perhaps unethical or not in line with your brand partners or potential brand partners, you immediately, you know, close that door, just because that's detrimental to any relationship, right? If they follow you and they see that, you know, okay, you know, our brand is supposed to represent X, but you're out there posting about Y, then that's really not something we want to do.
That is a great piece of information. Thank you, Constantine, for asking that question, because social media rules everything right now. And it's so important to just be careful, not even if you're just an athlete, but in regular everyday life. I've seen people lose their jobs over their social media and their stories. It's not a game. It's literally not a game.
If there's one thing I want people to take out of this, particularly young people, is think before you post. Think how it's going to impact you down the road. You know,
somebody
needs to
don't
be creative. I don't say, you know, we're not saying don't, you know, share the highlights of your life, etc. But think before you post.
Yeah, I was just saying someone needs to go ahead and come up with that app or that widget, the think before you post widget. We need it.
I'll add one quick thing. Also, you know, the major athletes, they have people managing their social media. So, you know, that's another layer of protection, is having somebody, that's what the athletes are doing. They don't do it themselves, right? So that's another layer of protection you could have. Because I was talking to a corporation, I think it was last week, the week before, like they're interested in doing a big time sponsorship with an athlete, and they're paying attention to the profile and watching, and you know, before they make that move, and everything looks good now, but they're watching. So just you know, they're all watching.
That's really good, Jerome. Big brother.
Yeah, no, so important. I mean, some of these athletes are even doing, spam accounts where they have a smaller group, close family and friends, where they could, be themselves if they want to, right? Obviously, still being careful, but I always tell, like, to Jerome's point, some of our athletes, we do manage their social media, right? Because it's important to make sure that, hey, this is not just your social media account. This is a platform in which you're going to be able to earn revenue from. So you got to be very careful and treat it as such.
But also, what is careful? Because with the ability to record a screen grab, or my closest, who I think is one of my closest friends hanging out in my spam account, might need some money and anonymously out me to somebody with a screen. Like, it's just, there's no safety on the internet. And I think
1000%.
so important to talk about.
Yeah, and that goes to, who you choose to surround yourself with, right?
Sure.
It's who do you choose to associate with? Do they have integrity? Do they have your back? And it's, I mean, this applies particularly to young student athletes that could potentially be very successful. But who you keep close around you makes a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Constantine. Well, we got about 22 minutes left in this, and I want to make sure that we give some time to the financial aspect of this webinar. We have Chad Willardson here, who is involved in so many amazing ventures to just promote financial literacy. And so I want to kind of give him the floor, because as we know, with these deals, there is so much money at stake. And you even talking about how there was somebody, I mean, we know this from the Kobe Bryants and all these other athletes that come straight out of high school, that there's such an opportunity for you to make money at a very young and irresponsible age.
Yeah.
And so I want to just talk to you a little bit about what you feel like young people need to know about investing, and when should we start learning about this stuff?
Good question. So I'll start with a story. I met with a soon to be NFL first rounder. Sheesh, it was probably 6 to 8 years ago. And he was someone who had he had a lot of misbehavior in his high school years and even in his college years. And he was going to be getting a lot of money. And I went to dinner with him, his uncle, and agent, and a couple other friends. And I went through a presentation. And my first 2 slides in the presentation were, what do all these athletes have in common? And it was athletes who had made between $100 and $500 million in their career. And you could probably guess what they all had in common, but they all were bankrupt. Eventually, they had all blown all their money, and they'd all gone into debt, and they were in serious financial trouble, which seemed impossible when you looked at the total dollar amount of their professional earnings. And we spent the next 30 minutes talking about surrounding yourself with the right people, like Constantine said, building a team, having some financial discipline. It's okay to celebrate when you get that big contract or that big deal. It's okay to go out and celebrate. You don't have to save every single penny that you get, but don't be foolish with it. Don't overspend, overcommit. Don't buy things for people just because they were your friends. And so here we are sitting with this guy and this athlete, this football player, and he essentially said, I'm not like one of those guys. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to make those mistakes. I've got the right people around me. And anyways, we had a couple great meetings for the next 6 months, exchanged a lot of texts towards the point when he got the big deal, the multi-million-dollar deal. And then he went silent. He went silent, and I thought, you know what? He's probably just kind of getting some stuff out of his system. He finally made the money he's been wanting to make. Let's see where it all goes. And literally within the first week, I saw in the news that he had purchased, I think, 5 or 6 Lamborghinis or something insane like that. Not one, but like 5 or 6. And
well, you need one for each day of the week, right, Chad?
Yeah, he needed a color for every day of the week. And he just went on a spending spree that was insane. And I think Shaquille O'Neal's talked about that before, where he spent $1 million in one day. But like you say one thing, but when you actually get the money and you've never had a lot of money, it's difficult. It's not easy to have that kind of discipline. And I think that's why you have to set goals and parameters before you get the big money. And so I've got an NBA player client who is so incredibly responsible. And literally he was driving a used car that he paid $46,000 for as a rookie in his teens, making millions of dollars. And like, when we talked about it, he just said he bought a nice car that he didn't really need. And then we talked about it and he said, you know what, I don't need that car. I'm on the road most of the time and I can walk to the stadium. And so he turned it in and he got like an inexpensive used car. And we've helped him invest in a bunch of real estate deals. He's learning things that he never knew before. So I think it's just critically important to set some financial parameters and have financial goals and work with people who have your best interest at heart from a very young age. If you wait till after you get the money, it's a little bit harder because you might already be slipping into bad choices or maybe spending money with people that you don't really need to spend money with.
How does one find, what would be a great resource for someone to go to figure out, like, what's a good way to start setting these goals? What goals should I be setting? Yeah,
good question. I'd say there are many fiduciaries throughout the country. That's a key word, is a fiduciary, and it's a legal term that a lot of lawyers obviously understand, but you want to find a financial fiduciary, someone who is totally independent and is giving good financial advice, who's not trying to sell you. I think that's the biggest thing I see is athletes get sucked into the get rich quick stuff. And they think, oh, I could make some ridiculous return and it's guaranteed. And they get caught up in the hype of owning something that sounds really exciting. And it turns out that it's not very good and they lost all their money. I think it happened to Tim Duncan from the NBA. I know Scottie Pippen and some other, Antoine Walker, they've been involved in hundreds of millions of dollars of deals that all went to zero. Because the people who were presenting these investment opportunities had a vested interest in selling them. They were getting commissions and making lots of money because the athlete was just saying, you know what, yeah, I should trust this guy. So I think looking for an independent financial fiduciary with credentials, they're all over the country, and working with a team that has your back and doesn't have any vested interest in selling you stuff for investments. I think that's critical.
How would you know whether or not, if you've got a financial manager or you have somebody that's handling your money for you,
yeah,
it's something that you could be looking out for that could be a red flag that this might not be going the way that you think?
If they're pressuring you to, if they're following up a ton and pressuring you to buy a specific investment, if they work for the company that where your money is, that means they're not a fiduciary. So if your money is at XYZ Bank and the person telling you what to do with the money works for XYZ Bank, then that person is not an independent fiduciary. Obviously, they work within the structure of the bank or the insurance company, you know. So a lot of these situations, there's people who get into the pro athlete networks. They've cracked that kind of that field, and they are very good salespeople. They're very good salespeople, and they're working with a clientele that is young and inexperienced and has lots of money. And so I've seen some athletes paying 5 to 10 times what it should cost and just really being taken advantage of because they just don't have experience. And so you can very easily find out if your financial person is a fully independent fiduciary, but I just think that's critical because you want advice that's unbiased and is not compromised with conflicts of interest.
And I'll give you the easiest way to do what you're saying, Christina, which is for the folks that end up viewing this, reach out to one of us. We'll try to give you direction if we can, you know, point you to the right people.
That's great, Constantine. Well, we want to give everyone a chance in the audience to ask questions. This is also an interactive webinar, and we want to make sure that if there's something that we didn't cover here, that you have the room to ask a question. So if you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat. throw as many questions as you want in the chat, and we will go from there. Chad, I wanted to ask you one more question, or maybe even Eric, because you were a college athlete, or Alex, obviously, because you deal with college athletes right now. All of this where people are falling under the pressure of spending money that they shouldn't, whether it's through social interactions or they've hired their friends. I call it the MC Hammer syndrome, where it's like all your friends become your employees. And then before you know it, you have a payroll of like 100 different people that don't really do anything except walk around with you. And, you know, they're your friend, and you give them some, you know, weird title just for the sake of having them on the payroll. And then you're broke. Like, what are some of the safeguards? Like, what can some of these people do as far as setting boundaries, even with their friends, to avoid that pitfall?
I'd say we've acted as a buffer to bad financial decisions for our athlete clients. So they can often, I tell them, just blame us. Sometimes when they're offered bad deals or people are proposing things that would really not be financially wise for them, I say, just tell them I presented this to my financial team and they said it's not a fit for me right now. You know, so I try to act as the buffer for them to not be having those tough personal conversations with people they care about, where they're trying to take advantage of them maybe, or they just don't have good ideas. I think going back to an earlier question, Christina, is that they need to learn about investing as soon as possible. The greatest asset you have as an investor is time. And so the younger you start, the less you have to invest to make a huge impact. That's something that we teach in Gravy Stack. And my second book is called Smart Not Spoiled. It's teaching kids. I mean, I have a lot of college students who read it too, but teaching kids how to be smart with money. And so we talk about the value of compounding interest. And a lot of these athletes in the NIL space, I'm saying, if you can get a certain amount of money in your bank account invested by the time you're a freshman in college, it doesn't matter if you don't go pro or don't get that contract. If it's invested wisely, it will not matter. You'll have enough by the time you're 40 or 50 to where you could leave or do whatever you want to do for work. So let's not depend on getting that huge deal in the pros. Let's do smart stuff while you're a high school or a college student and really set you up for success.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what I love about, I haven't read your book yet, but even what I know about this Gravy Stack app that you guys have started, and the fact that you made it a gaming experience really
Right.
takes the pressure off of the parent to try to figure out how to teach this and motivate them. Because kids don't want to learn about money. They, at this point, because we have debit cards, they feel like money just grows on trees. And they're like, what do you
Right.
mean you don't have $20 for this toy? Mom, you
Right.
just swipe your card. It's this invisible genie with money on it. And that's just not how it works. So I just really appreciate you guys for being innovative like that and turning that into a gaming space for kids.
My pleasure.
Jerome, we do have a question in the chat, and I want Jerome to answer this one. It says, what is the future of college programs and athletes with all the changes that are going on?
Well, that's a great question. So I think what you're going to see is really two types of schools. So one type of college that's going to have true integration of academics and sports. And the second type is basically going to be a separate sports business that simply licenses the college name. And so I think keeping in mind as an athlete of what your goals are. So, you know, if you're looking to leverage college and the network and the experience and you want that, then that's the first type of school will be better for you. If you're really focused on solely on sports and you really want to be part of the sports program, then the second is for you. And interestingly too, I'll share one thing. So South Carolina became the first school in the nation to have an in-house NIL firm. So basically they're going to have free access to students to deal facilitation, content generation, branding. And so I think you're going to see, you know, more of this spread. This is really for their top 25 to 35 athletes, but I think this is going to spread to more schools. Maybe Alice can speak to this, but I see really two colleges, again, true integration of academic and sports, and one just licensing the college name. It's really a separate program.
I don't know if Alex, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, that's spot on, Jerome. Thank you. That's it depends on what you're looking for, just to echo what Jerome mentioned. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's just what the ultimate goal is.
That's awesome. Eric, I have a question in the chat that I want to direct your way. This is coming from, looks like a parent who is wondering, they have a faith and they grew up going to church, but now they've released their kid into the college realm and wondering, like, what are some things they can do as a parent to just kind of encourage their kid to continue in the faith when everything around them is not full of any kind of faith.
Sure. I mean, first off, pray, and do a good job of living out your own faith values at home. Like, take personal responsibility for your own faith before trying to force that on your kids. There are a number of different organizations that work on college campuses that allow space for students to engage in their faith. For athletes, I think of Athletes in Action, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, College Golf Fellowship. We're specific to the golf world, but in a similar way. I've said this, I'll say this 1,000 times, relationships are really the most important part of life. They drive so many things in our lives. And so helping them to find resources where they can find relationships with other like-minded people of faith is the best thing you can do for your child, because really at this point they're making their own decisions. And the hard part about college is that as a parent, you're not going to seem very intelligent or wise to them until they turn 25 or 26. And my dad got a lot smarter when I turned 26. He didn't do anything different. I just grew up.
Your eyes were open.
And so focus on your own personal faith and try to find resources and organizations where your child can find access to other relationships with like-minded people of faith.
I love that. Thank you so much for that.
I'd love to add just to that, just because I love that, Eric. I love that point because, and also try to connect them with, say, whether it's an attorney, whether it's an agent or what have you, of faith as well. Truthfully, I've been able to get some of my, to work with some of my clients based on my faith, right? It's funny, right? And at times in the world we live in now could be a double-edged sword when you bring that in our first meeting. But long story short, I was conversing with a prospect, which is now a client, and that's part of our meeting. Excuse me. I mentioned, oh yeah, I go to this church, and the mom immediately was like, oh yeah, I know that pastor. So we clicked, right? And obviously, the athlete at the time really could care less, right? But it sort of worked out, right? Where, I kind of, don't press too much on him, but, continue the conversation about faith and growth.
Let me throw out one additional point, and it's not related to faith, but it is related to the whole idea of the people that you surround yourself with. And I would throw this out and say, be cautious if everyone around you always says yes, 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 right? You want to surround yourself with people that are not just trying to please you, and placate you, but you want people that'll ask questions, that'll challenge you, hey, Chad, I'm looking at this investment. Should I get into it? It's like, well, why are you looking to get into it? Let's look at this. What are your long-term goals, et cetera? Instead of saying, sure, yeah, let's put 10 million into that. You don't want a bunch of yes people around you. You want people that will help you actively think through and challenge you as you're making these decisions in life.
And to your point, Constantine, I think that really takes the athlete to be able to take that and be receptive and to also ask those questions, because I think sometimes when you have hired hands around you, they're not going to ask those things if they don't think that you are willing to let them ask those questions. So I think that you have to be willing to open the door and kind of make the first move in that equation of saying, hey guys, I'm asking you to challenge me. I'm asking you to call me out when I'm on social media doing something crazy. I'm asking you for the feedback because I want to make sure that I allow you the space to do what I'm asking you to do and to look out for me in these ways.
Can I
Absolutely.
share a story, Christina?
Yes, please.
So I was being interviewed to be the potential financial advisor for an NBA athlete, and I was the last person to present. And they were at a house in Southern California with they had their agent, their family, big extended family there, college coach, high school coach, travel ball coach, just a huge group of like 20 something people there in the room. And I went in last, and I went through kind of a discussion, conversation, presentation at the very end. One of the questions the parents asked me was, is your team going to handle the billing and paying the bills for our son? And I actually laughed out loud. And I said, like, pay his bills? And they said, yes. And I said, why do you ask that? And they said, well, all the other companies have offered to handle all the bill pay for him every month. And I was like, he's 19 years old and he's going to be living in an apartment on an NBA team next to the stadium. I said, how many bills is he going to have? Like, he's going to have his electricity, his internet,
Yeah.
his car, phone, a couple things like that, like his car and his phone. But like, how many bills is he actually going to have? And I said, is this a free service? And they said, no, it's like $1,500 a month. I said, so you're telling me you're going to pay these firms $1,500 a month to click a few auto bill pays every single month? I said, do you want your son to be retired NBA player, 35 years old, and have no idea how to pay a bill?
So good.
Because if so, then I'm not your guy, because I'd rather teach them these things so that they're independent and they're not just calling us up to say, hey, how do I pay my electricity bill? I said, I'd rather teach them how to invest, how to be an entrepreneur and do things like this so they're actually more capable and educated and not completely dependent on these financial teams. And at first I felt like the reaction, they were a little bit taken back, but in the end, obviously they hired us. And so I think it's important, like Constantine said, you need a challenge and be willing to be honest. And as an athlete and a family of an athlete, you've got to be looking for people who will tell you the truth and not just tell you what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What a great piece of ending information. I love that. Guys, we are actually at the end of our time. I think this was amazing. If anyone has any closing thoughts, I'd love to give you the floor. But we got about 2 minutes left. And I just want to kind of go back to what you just said about teaching them to do these things. It's so important, and starting them young is so important to give them the right foundation so that if this all falls apart, they can still have success and they can still live and they can still do all the things and thrive in life. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Any closing thoughts?
Nope. Thank you for being a wonderful moderator, Christina. Thank you for helping guide this. I need to run to the airport where I guess I'm going to be visiting Alex if you're in Miami. All right, guys.
Let's connect.
And I want to thank all the panelists too. I know your time is so valuable, and we really, really appreciate it. And that we'll make sure a recorded copy gets out to everyone, but really appreciate you guys' time and advice. This was invaluable. And I always learn so much too, just hearing from all of you. So really excited to have each of you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having
so
us on.
much.
Appreciate it.
And thank you to everybody who joined us today for this webinar. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can email me. I will put my email in the chat. It's christina@fpgeneralcounsel.com. Thank you guys again and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.